Let's bring in our panel up top here. Matt Schlapp, contributor with The Hill, Amy Walter, national editor for the Cook Political Report, and Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics co-founder and publisher. Amy, first to you. Hope Hicks, it's hard to overstate her importance for this president, candidate Trump, and then President Trump. She's been there. I mean, it's part communications director, but part body man or body woman with the president.
She's literally been there by his side from the very beginning, and a person that he trusted probably more than anybody who wasn't in his immediate family. So this is somebody in the innermost circle. At the same time, I think that John's point that he made at the end there about the issue of saying that there are times that I have said white lies. I've never said anything that was outwardly false or was a lie about the Russia investigation. But your job as a White House communications director, that's a pretty damaging piece of information to get out there, that anything that is put out on the record by your White House communications director has to come through that filter of somebody who is admitted to saying things that aren't true at different times. So I do think that's a piece of this. I also don't doubt...
Let's be clear that White House communications director and press secretaries in the past have said things that are
absolutely
clearly not accurate and not true, but they haven't been quoted, or New York Times hasn't had a headline that says Hope Hicks acknowledges she sometimes tells white lies.
That's right. At the same time, I also don't doubt that she's ready to go. Nobody can live at this level. I think most folks can make it a year or two at this pace, and they are ready to go. Usually you see somebody leaving at the midterm. It's really hard to believe they could make it much longer.
We should point out Chief of Staff John Kelly put out a statement as well. When I became Chief of Staff, I quickly realized what so many people have learned about Hope. She is strategic, poised, and wise beyond her years. She became a trusted advisor and counselor and did a tremendous job overseeing the communications for the president's agenda, including the passage of historic tax reform. She has served her country with great distinction. To say that she will be missed is an understatement. Matt, your thoughts on this and what it means for this White House?
I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big piece of news. I think presidents put people around them who they're comfortable with, who they trust, who they have a relationship with. And when someone who has this type of relationship leaves, it's hard for a president. Now, I think what's a little different about this president is I actually think it's not going to change that much. When people who are very close to him go from inside the circle to outside the White House, he still obviously communicates with them regularly. And I don't think her relationship will change that much. But the physical proximity every morning, starting off, planning the day, responding, it's hard. It's hard for presidents when this happens.
And White House communications job, a big one to fill. There's another person named Schlapp who's in that team. Mercedes, we should point that out as you're here on the panel, who may have a bigger role now. But it is a big job, especially for a White House under attack.
It is a big job in some ways. Trump is the communications director of his administration via his Twitter account. But two things, really. One is that I think, regardless of what the White House says, the timing of this is bound to encourage speculation of the, grist for the pundit and rumor mill about what really drove her to make the announcement. She's not leaving anytime soon. She's not like she's being run out of the building. But to Matt's point, Trump has lost another person. There are very few. In fact, there's only one, Dan Scavino, the social media director, who is part of his original team. He lost Keith Schiller, his body man. He's lost a lot of folks that he really does trust to be in that building with him. And, we'll see how that plays out. But there are very few left outside of his family now, inside the building, with whom he has those sorts of bonds.
I want to play, just moments ago, Senator Richard Burr was asked about Hope Hicks resigning. He obviously is the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
She really didn't provide for us any information on the investigation that we have. It may be that the House is investigating something different, but we're looking at Russian collusion, and it doesn't fall into that bucket.
And basically, Amy, both Democrats and Republicans said that she took privilege on a lot of the questions that had to do with her time in the White House. She answered questions about the transition, but 9 hours, every question, every angle, every kind of combination up on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Right. And there was both, again, this is where we are at this point in politics in Washington. Democrats are going to be frustrated. Republicans are going to say she did the best of her ability. There was no possibility, as Senator Burr said, we didn't see any opportunity to say that this is about collusion. I don't know if that was certainly a big issue yesterday. But again, I think the bigger question as we move into the midterm elections and think about what's going to happen afterwards is, who's going to be around the president in the second half of his first term? Again, there's normally a lot of turnover at that time, but presidents prepare for that. They know who the next team is going to be to take the place. Now, I don't think we have a lot of answers on which, sort of who's in that pipeline to come up, not just for this job, but I think we're going to see a lot of turnover in much bigger jobs.
But who is the Trump whisperer inside the White House now? I mean, Hope Hicks clearly was...
Like I said,
I
don't know if that changes. I mean, I've seen it. They have a very tight relationship. She's probably the #1 staffer in many ways for the longest period of time. Worked for Ivanka before that. I don't see that relationship changing. I think he's going to reach out to her and talk to her on a regular basis. I also think when you get Donald Trump, his #1 relationship is with his family, and he's going to continue to talk to them as well. And then he has all these people he's known for a very long period of time throughout his business career. He is constantly reaching out to people and polling them and asking them and getting feedback. It's why it makes him an effective communicator, because he is actually talking to people on a regular basis.
It does come, last thing here, as there's this security clearance question. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, Donald Trump's son-in-law, a senior advisor. We talked about it yesterday, but there are many others, a few dozen, we're told, who had security questions and maybe even a downgrade as far as clearance. So that's also happening at the same time. And there's a lot of things happening at this White House.
Yeah. Look, I think John Kelly's trying to deal with the issue of security clearances sort of writ large inside the White House. But the Jared Kushner security clearance issue is one that has garnered the most attention because of the portfolio that he has, the proximity, whether he can do his job without having the top secret security clearance. And I think that remains an open question. But a lot of the speculation about, I think, his security clearance. We saw this Washington Post article the other day, which I just thought was unnecessarily, ominous about him being manipulated by. I mean, he's the son-in-law of the President of the United States, and certainly the President can grant him need-to-know authority for anything that he needs to do. So I think that's been a bit of a red herring, a bit too much made about that.
Okay, panel, thank you.